Red Barada River, the day it turned to blood. The Barada River, the lifeline of Damascus, flows through the city like a vein, nourishing its people and carrying centuries of history along its banks. But in February 2012, this ancient river turned an unnatural red. Its waters, once a source of life, carried a chilling message, a message of death and terror. This is the story of how the Barada River became a silent witness to one of the darkest crimes of the Syrian Civil War, forever staining its name. The setting. The year was 2012. Syria was in chaos. Protests that began as peaceful demands for reform had escalated into a brutal civil war. The regime of Bashar al-Assad responded to the uprising with extreme violence, determined to crush any dissent. Towns and villages across Syria became battlegrounds, with innocent civilians often caught in the crossfire. But what happened near the Barada River was beyond imagination. The Massacre. During the siege of Homs, Assad's forces expanded their campaign of terror to surrounding areas, including the villages near the Barada River. Witnesses later recounted how soldiers stormed homes, dragging men, women, and even children out into the streets. Those suspected of opposing the regime were executed on the spot, while others were taken to the riverbanks. What followed was a scene of unimaginable horror. Under the cover of night, soldiers bound their victims, tortured them, and carried out mass executions along the river. The bodies were dumped into the water, their blood mixing with the current and flowing downstream. By morning, the Barada River ran red. The evidence emerges, news of the massacre spread quickly among activists. Horrifying video footage and photographs began to surface, showing bodies floating in the river, their hands tied, their faces unrecognizable from the brutality they had endured. Families who lived near the river came out in desperation, searching for their loved ones among the bodies carried by the current. Satellite images captured during this time provided undeniable evidence of the atrocities. The river's unnatural red hue was visible even from space, a macabre scar cutting through the heart of Damascus. The cover-up. The Assad regime, as it had done many times before, denied responsibility. State media claimed that the river's discoloration was caused by industrial waste or pollution. They dismissed the reports of mass killings as fabricated propaganda by foreign powers. But the testimonies of survivors and activists painted a very different picture. One survivor, a man who escaped the executions, recounted the chilling screams he heard as his neighbors were slaughtered. "The river was alive with their blood," he said. "I will never forget the sound or the sight of it." The aftermath: for days, the red waters of the Barada River carried the bodies of the victims downstream. Many were never recovered, swept away into the depths of the river or buried in mass graves by the regime. Families mourned in silence, too afraid to speak out, knowing that doing so could cost them their lives. The river, once a symbol of life, became a place of dread. People avoided it, unable to forget the horrors it had witnessed. The sight of the Red River burned into their memories, a reminder of the regime's cruelty and the lives lost. The legacy today: the Barada River runs clear again, but its waters carry the weight of history. The massacre near its banks remains one of the most haunting symbols of the Syrian Civil War, a conflict that has left millions dead, displaced, or missing. International organizations continue to demand accountability for the crimes committed during the war, including the massacre at the Barada River. But justice remains elusive. The regime remains in power, and the voices of the victims are still silenced. For the people of Damascus, the Barada River is no longer just a river. It is a graveyard, a witness, and a reminder of the price of tyranny. Conclusion. The story of the Barada River is a chilling testament to the horrors of war and the fragility of human life. It asks a question that echoes through history. How many more rivers must run red before justice is served? If this story shook you as much as it did us, hit that follow button and join our community for more untold horrors. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think truly happened by the Barada River? Your voice matters.